Welcome to the Fellowship of the Script, the podcast where we dive deep into the craft, struggles, and stories of filmmaking. I am your host, Eric Bowder.
And I'm Ben Escobar.
Whether you're just starting out or you've been in the industry for years, this is the place for real talk about the art and business of film. Today, we are going to be talking about the 3 stages of film production. But before we get into why we chose this topic, if you're watching or listening on Spotify, please follow us so you get notified every time we drop a new episode. It helps our podcast and it gets recommended to new people if you do that. So we would really appreciate it. So hello, new people. But Ben, how did you first learn what the 3 stages of film production were?
I think the earliest I could think back on it was when I pulled up the behind the scenes disc of the 3-hour deluxe King Kong with Peter Jackson's King Kong. And it was like this box, and it came with 3 discs. It was like part 1 of the movie, part 2, and then part 3 was the BTS. And he was saying these things like pre-production and production and post-production. That's how I learned how sound was, like a boom mic. Very caveman style learning of film. But I'm very grateful for that memory because it was really good. And it was, very insightful. He knows people like that who make those things well. They know that you are likely a young person or just person who's really eager to learn and trying to, check the library and, do your homework. So that was a good source for me. But what about you?
Yeah, it's a similar situation. I remember once we switched over to a DVD player from obviously VHS tapes. For I don't know, some people listening might not. They're like, VHS, the hell is that?
Yeah.
But yeah, so the DVDs obviously, they had special features on them. And once I realized there was behind the scenes footage, I started going through every single one we had. And that's how I realized, oh, there's like different phases of it. And it was really eye opening. So for those of you who aren't aware, after the development stage, which is where a lot of films get stuck, there's pre-production, principal photography, and then post-production. Each stage builds on the last. And if you skip steps in development, you won't have a clear vision. If you neglect pre-production, production falls apart. And if you skimp on post, your story will never fully come to life. So every stage is incredibly crucial, and each one requires its own attention to detail and crew expertise, if you will say. Today's industry expects indie filmmakers to understand the full pipeline. So even if you specialize in one role, maybe you're just an actor or you're just a writer, whatever it is that you want to do, you should definitely know what the different stages are and what they entail. Ben, do you want to get us started on development? Because we got to get into that before the other stages.
For sure.
Yeah.
So think about where your idea comes from. Obviously, there's that first spark. There's people who say they have endless ideas every day for movies. I can totally see that. I've tried to be more focused about that because the more I do that, then one idea overshadows another. But there's something about that process that you will be committed to something you really, really like, and it'll really make you think and you won't stop thinking about it. And what I sort of do is begin the outlining process, which is sort of a version of a treatment, which is sort of a version of just like a diary for me, which eventually transforms into a screenplay. But the outlining phase is truly just like a sort of self test of like, how deeply can I flesh out this idea down to every characters, down to like signature moments, like what are the scenes that I'm making this movie for? What is my beginning? What is my middle? What is my end? And if you have like knockout ideas for that make you like lose sleep at night because that screenplay is not done, that's probably a really good idea. If you're struggling to capture that, doesn't always mean it's a bad idea, but continue at it. And it's good to make North Stars for yourself in this development process. So that way you never like lose sight of, why you're doing it.
Yeah, I have an endless amount of notes on my phone that are just movie ideas. And every once in a while, I'll find that one sticks with me more than others. And that's how I usually choose which one to move to the outline phase. And then from there, I end up, starting to actually write the script. And, if it's that, like Ben had said, that's each one of these steps in the development phase, you're testing to see if it actually kind of floats. There's often times where I start going down the rabbit hole of an idea, and I find that it's either falling apart or it starts to get a little too ridiculous. And if that happens really early on, that's a good indicator that maybe you need to go back to the drawing board. Obviously, we're talking from a writing perspective right now, but when we get to the packaging phase, which is after you've written the script and you're ready to start showing it to people, getting feedback, and maybe even taking it a step further and getting people attached, whether it's actors, a director, producers, anyone who can help get a project greenlit. That's obviously something that I mean, Ben, I think, has more experience with, but I'm in that process right now for my feature Always Ready. So I find myself going back and forth, between projects, trying to get people attached for Always Ready, since that one is actually going to need some financing. But speaking of financing, there's different ways to get that funding. There's grants, which I don't have a lot of experience with, but they are out there for specific states. They sometimes require specific criteria. Maybe it has to be about a certain topic. And then there's obviously the one that you hear the most about, which is private investors. Those are those angel investors that you're pitching to, trying to get them on board, so they'll put up the money for your idea, and the paperwork sorts out what cut they get and all of that stuff. We won't get too deep into that. We can do a whole episode on financing. There's
Yep.
crowdfunding, which I'm about to utilize, so that's an interesting one for me right now. I'm doing a lot of research on it. And then obviously the one that you hear about the most is studios. People go to studios with a package and they get greenlit by a studio, and usually that means they got a pretty good budget. Um, Ben, you want to talk about vision and tone and why development matters so much?
Yeah, I think like again, it's that North Star feeling that you have when you first come up with the idea. Is you can see it, you can see the visuals in your head when you first come up with it. If you're coming up with a really fast, cool movie that's like large scale about like cars and racing, then your brain is probably presenting this to you in a movie theater that's like IMAX with loud sound and big feelings and like that. And that's sort of the soul and heartbeat of the entire development process through and through, which means if you're developing a movie about cars and stuff, then you got to assemble your whole team with people that love this as much as you do and are seeing that same IMAX movie in your head without having this movie made yet. You know what I mean? So like if you're emotionally attached and people are yes anding you about like, oh, I like this car, or I've got this car, and you guys are just constantly iterating on what you already love, then there's no way your thing does not get made. It's only gonna get made and it's gonna be super fun. And other people who love what you love, those, car movies, will come as a ton of them will come. And when you're lucky, you can hopefully get that on a studio level project. I'm sure movies like F1, there's no way those don't get made with a bunch of like car heads on there. Like, and there's no way they're having I know that the Gran Turismo people had a blast making that because they all love cars. I know the producer on there at PlayStation, he loves cars to death. And he was like, man, the Gran Turismo set, man, we got to drive those ourselves. We got to have so much fun. And like, everyone's just like so happy to, just indulge in what they love. But I mean, yeah, I agree with you. We can do an episode on all of these. I think like the art of packaging is a really good episode idea. But
Yeah,
yeah, just make sure you're emotionally, aligned.
yeah, and there's ways to pitch your vision with actual visuals, whether that's like a lookbook or a pitch deck. Some people go as far as making a concept film so that it's kind of like a short film, except it might not feel like it has a clear beginning and ending because it's literally just a scene pulled out from the film that is it gives the writer or the director the ability to show what it's going to look and feel like and sound like and all of that, which I feel like is I hear at times that's a great way to do it. Other times I hear like that's a waste of money. You should just put that money into the film, or you know getting more money together. um Again, financing is such a rabbit hole, but um a strong development phase ensures that you're not figuring it out on set. It ensures that the farther along you get into production, you know, you're not going to have all these holes that people are poking in it. Obviously, from the beginning, people are like, "I like your idea, but what about this? What about that?" You should probably start adding those things to your pitch, or if you don't know the answer to those things, you should find out and add them to your pitch. You know, it's when you're pitching and trying to get people involved with your project, it's a constant conversation of why this story, what do you need, who's attached, and why you. I guess why you is the most important thing. Passion goes a long way, like Ben was saying. Before we get into talking about pre-production, I just wanted to kind of give you guys a peek behind the scenes. I personally am recovering from like a back injury. I like pulled a muscle, and so I'm not feeling the best right now. I'm on some muscle relaxers that make me a little drowsy. And then Ben, I don't know if you want to tell them you.
I had Montezuma's Revenge in Los Angeles, meaning I had some, or I don't even know. That's like the water. If you drink the water in Mexico, then you get the
Yeah,
shits. Anyway, I had Mexican food, Mexican seafood, sushi in a dinner the other night, and it definitely has had its revenge on me for the last 48 hours. And I'm hopefully at the tail end of that, but it's okay.
dude, I'm sorry. I'm like listening to you right now, and all of a sudden the door opens, and here's Casey just like in her diaper. Like, don't come in here in your diaper. I yeah. So luckily, Ben and I, both of our little setbacks here happen at the same time. So it's not like, you know, Ben gets food poisoning, and then a couple days later I like pulled a muscle in my back, and there's no podcast for like 2 weeks or something. But anyways, just so you guys know, we've been going through going through the ringer behind the scenes here, but we're back. So pre-production, obviously, it starts with the script breakdown. You're going to be identifying the locations, the props, the costumes, the special effects and stunts that it's going to entail, and planning around all of that. Ben, do you want to talk about budgeting and scaling?
Yeah, so I guess it really just depends on the scale of your project. But let's keep this to indie terms for now, and I'll also give a little insight to the studio side. When you're packaging a project on an indie level, it's probably not, unless you really can, put your, like, if you can walk the talk of saying, yeah, I'm trying to make a $1 to $3 million film, and you can like show the effort and show the work of, this is where I'm going to go to for that, and here's who I know. Even if it's not a surefire thing, but if you have more or less of a math equation that doesn't make you sound insane, then yeah, that's a really good way to start. And you can get a line producer who's able to like break down your script and say, okay, here's how many shoot days I estimate with this. Here's your biggest actor in this. Whose work. If you're gonna pay for a big lead, then you're gonna break down the days separately of how many days we're gonna have our big actor on there. How much money are we gonna pay for that? And then what's the least amount of days we can have that big actor on there, so that way we can spend the least amount of money on them, but then still maintain the highest quality and put that budget elsewhere. Um, then scheduling, of course, is another line producer activity. On the studio side, when you're pitching, it's just sort of like money is not really an object in that regard, unless you're having a package that is big. At which point you can start throwing around millions in the tens, or if you're lucky enough in the hundreds, which is you're very, very lucky. But I would say, like, if you've got like a big IP that's well known, that's like people can say, oh shit, that's like a remake or a sequel of something, then you can probably get away with saying this is going to cost like 15 to 30 million. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I could see that. And then you just get an actor who's going to be like, I don't know, like 3 million of that. And then, again, but it's not really your job, I guess, unless you're really interested in that. But the studios have designated line producers themselves because, it's their money. So they're going to be extra, extra careful about those.
Yeah, and I feel like everything we talk about here can be broken down to its own episode and stuff. But I think one thing to keep in mind that's so much more important than I hear a lot of people talk about is you need to know how much you're spending on pre-production, principal photography, and post-production. I see a lot of people neglect post-production, and then they get their film shot, and then they go to edit it, and then they go to do the sound and color and all of that, and they don't have any money. And a lot of new filmmakers tend to trip over the finish line there because they don't have the money to finish it with the quality that they were hoping to have. One thing that I've been for Hunter, I'll use Hunters as an example because I just wrapped that like totally. Like I just waiting on a poster and then it's a done deal. It's going to festivals. I would say I spent about 40% of the budget on post production, which sounds like a lot because it is. I mean, you got to think that the standard rate on an indie level for a colorist and a sound designer is 100 a minute. So the longer you film, the more money you're going to need for post, unless you're going to just be doing it yourself and or you got a homie that's going to do it in their garage, which I've seen varying results for that. You know, you definitely you get what you pay for. And obviously the smaller budget you have, the more you're going to have to probably compromise your vision to make it work and execute it at the level you're hoping to. But it really just depends on what your vision is and what resources you have access to. But I know a lot of people who are probably listening to this, they're starting out or they're pretty early into their career. So again, I think it's great that Ben has some experience with the studio level stuff, but don't be intimidated by all of this studio jargon. If you're, for example, like me, you're a writer, director, actor, producer, hyphenate, just expect early on to be doing a lot of the groundwork like that yourself. You're probably going to be figuring out your own budget and scheduling. But um, yeah, that's but talking about the packaging earlier and stuff. Uh, a lot of the casting will happen probably, or a lot of the major casting will happen during development, hopefully. But when you're in pre-production and you're getting the rest of your cast together, you got to find the right talent to fill both the lead roles, the supporting roles, and you might have some day players. Um, I know early on I tend to pull from people I've worked with before because hiring a casting director costs money as well. So I definitely try to tap on people that I've worked with before. I know they have a good attitude. I know they can act to the ability that I need them to for this particular character, stuff like that. But I mean, I see a lot of people do local casting calls. If you live in a market where there is a lot of actors, let's say Albuquerque, Austin, they're starting to have a really big film market. You can find actors by doing, Facebook casting calls and stuff like that. I mean, you're probably not going to get Oscar worthy actors, from doing that, but it's a place to start, especially for early on with these smaller projects. Crew and equipment is just as crucial as the casting. Know what equipment you can and can't afford. Don't waste money on equipment that you don't have the experience to actually utilize. If it's your first short film, hell, I see a lot of people use DSLRs and stuff early on, or their iPhone, things like that. Don't spend all your money on some fancy camera and you don't have somebody who knows how to use it, because you're not you're not going to end up with
That's
what
the
you think.
worst, man. Well, that's the
Yeah,
worst. I've been there though. I've made that mistake where they had a black magic uh, pocket cinema cam at my film school, and that was like the biggest thing you could rent out of the closet, which was like looking back is like, really, guys, that's all you had. But anyway, um, I had gotten, I was like, I'm going to make the best short film because I got the camera. And then I didn't know what coloring was. And I didn't realize that you shoot
gosh,
those
yeah,
things without color. And I was like, just sloppily fixing that up. It's good though if you are lucky enough to know someone that knows a camera and has their own equipment, just utilize that.
yeah,
Because otherwise, like when you're really budgeting for a short, like I mean, some of those equipment rentals can be like upwards of like 5,000 for like 2 days.
yeah. It's expensive really quickly, and I mean, I've seen people have access to just something like a Black Magic. And then I've seen other short films next to it where they had, some fancy red camera or an RE or something they got access to. But because they didn't have the proper lighting and other people behind the scenes, on the actual crew to do everything, you almost can't tell the difference. So you can definitely early on spend too much money on equipment than you need to, spend too much and then end up not having the money you need for the actual crew, which is definitely not a position you want to be in. It's you can watch endless videos on YouTube that talk about how it's not about the camera, it's about the person behind it. So keep that in mind. Ben, you want to talk about logistics?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the best track record with always getting permits and always doing the paperwork on some of my early shorts and works. That said, though, maybe it's don't ask, don't tell, but it's also a little bit. It's important to get your film permits if you're doing something like pretty grand and like noticeable. I guess if you're going to shoot at your friend's house, there's no reason to overthink it. You don't need a permit for your friend's house, uh, even if it's in this fucking city of LA. I don't know. Shoot me. I don't think that's necessary. And also, if you're like a small film crew, like you're not disturbing anybody, like then who cares? Insurance, however, also pick your battles with it. It is a big cost. It's going to cost you a couple $1,000s depending on the scale. If you are renting equipment and you're lucky to have like a 5-figure budget on your short, then you're probably going to have to get insurance. And often, you do need insurance to rent some of the higher profile like fancier cameras and stuff. And the right DP and everybody will require that anyway. In terms of call sheets and shot lists, so the call sheet is something that your assistant director does, and it's always good to have them done well in advance. I remember Derek having his done well in advance because a lot of people just do the call sheet the night before the next
Ugh,
shoot, and it's
yeah.
like I don't know why that's like a standard form of practice where like you're shooting from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and then at 9 p.m. as you're driving home, it's like see it again at 8 a.m. or like 7 a.m. tomorrow because we're gonna get the sunset or whatever. And it's like Jesus Christ, it would have been nice to know that, and then people are just so make sure to be timely with that is something we would both suggest. But then the thing with shot lists, I don't know, man. It depends on your position in this. If you're like a writer, director, multi hyphenate, like you're maybe even shooting this yourself, I would something that I'm wishing I had done, and I'm going to try to start doing next time I'm ever in that position of like writing, directing, shooting, is I'm going to try to write that shot list as closely as I can as I'm writing the screenplay because that's kind of the moment I see it the clearest. And when I'm like going back like a month later, I'm sure you've experienced this too. Like when you're going back like a month later, I'm like, fuck, now I have to shot list this. Why can't I remember it as I saw it as I was writing it? And it's like sometimes really frustrating, but yeah, it's always good to have. Not always good. You need to have it. If you
Yeah,
don't have one, then you're fucked.
I've heard so many people even on other sets where they're like, this is great. On the last film I was on, they didn't even have a shot list. And everybody's like, oh, everybody just groans because they're like, that is a complete nightmare. You show up and there's no plan and you expect to come out with good work. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. And shot lists are
Yeah.
definitely something that whoever you're shooting it with, let's say you're the director, talk to them and see what their personal preference is. They might want you to give them kind of a rough draft and then kind of tweak it together. They might want to come up with a shot list and then you give them feedback. I tend to do the shot list myself and then take it to the cinematographer and be like, what do you think? Is there any concerns that you see so I can adjust it? And I'll even sometimes put like flexible in the shot list next to a shot saying like, hey, this isn't exact, I don't know exactly what I want, but something like this, and we'll find it on the day. um but I know cinematographers and the crew really appreciate it when you show up with a plan. But the main takeaway is pre-production is where a movie actually gets made on paper. Shooting is just executing the plan, and the better you plan in pre-production, the more fun and less stressful, the more fun you're going to have and the less stressful the shoot is going to be. That is definitely how it is from my experience. I plan to the point where when you show up on the set that you don't really have a lot of questions except the details, which you want to be able to focus on during the day and not things that you should have been planning months in advance. We're gonna get in a little ad break before we talk about principal photography. Man, I'm just a mess today. Subscribe to the Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube channel. We would really appreciate the support. Follow us on our socials. I go by Danny Dorito 23 everywhere. Ben goes by.
I go by at real Ben Escobar or Genie Boy Games. I almost forgot my name.
Dude,
Fuck,
we're
dude.
both just feeling it today. It's all good.
Yeah.
Join our Discord if you want to talk about movies, just have fun conversations. There's also giveaways and stuff in there. But please, no drama. You will be banned. I just saw somebody get banned the other day. Giveaway
No.
milestones. It was justified. Don't worry. Giveaway milestones. We are giving away things like G Fuel, Blu-rays. I got a pair of like HyperX headphones, like a gaming headset to give away at some point. I have a ton of stuff to give away, and every time we hit a certain milestone, the next one for YouTube is 250 subs. I think we're at like 122 at the time of this recording, so about halfway there. We're almost to 10 Spotify ratings. We're also going to be doing one for 10 Apple reviews. And even when we hit milestones for the Discord, like when we hit 250 members on there, which I think we're around like 215. So getting close on that one. Join our Patreon for even more giveaways. You can get producer credits. You can get access to our film fellowship that we do every month, where we literally talk about each other's projects and give each other feedback and help each other navigate this crazy industry. We also have a hangout that's just for hanging out and talking about whatever, as well for $1 members and up. So if you aren't really, into the filmmaking process, or maybe you're just more of a casual viewer, that one is definitely a good fit for you. And keep in mind, you do get 15% off if you subscribe annually. So that will save you a nice little chunk of change. Maybe you're saving for a film that you want to shoot. So every bit counts. And then guys, I am sponsored by G Fuel. The stuff is great. I drink it every day. It gets me through those late night writing sessions. Don't forget to use code DannyD for 20% off at checkout. I know right now with their new formula, they're actually doing free shipping for orders that are $55 and up. So that's pretty cool. They don't do that often, or at least they haven't in the past. So take advantage of that. And I think right now, I think every new formula purchase also gets you a free, like, tall boy. I think it's called the Shockwave Shaker. It looks really nice. It's got the new logo on it and stuff. So get you some G Fuel. We appreciate the support. All right, Ben, take us away on principal photography.
Yeah, so principal photography is sort of like what everything is leading up to. It's sort of the make or break of the entire thing. You can really feel the energy on the set and on the day of that. Like, this is like, time is money. This is what it was all leading up to, and it just creates a different kind of work ethic that's really, you know, contagious in a good way, amongst everybody there. So just to talk a little bit more about that, there's like a workflow that goes in from obviously the director down to the AD, down to the DP, and the department heads. I'd say like your director, AD, DP are like your big three on the set. Maybe you could say the producer, but typically they're pretty hands off, and they're just kind of watching behind the scenes and handling paperwork if there ever is to anything, or like just extra logistical stuff. Um, that obviously, if you're, this isn't like an indie set, by the way. If you're doing like a different kind of like studio set, then your producer like maybe is a different kind of person. But the director like should be kind of kept in their own lane alongside the DP. They should be just kind of be one and the same. But then also the director should be with the actors and constantly like giving them the space they need, as much as like the focus and consultation they need. Obviously, you have some department heads, and the chain goes on from there. So you have, you know, department heads of wardrobe, makeup, heads of sound, heads of your DP is your head of camera department. So he has a assistant camera one, assistant camera two. AC one is meant to be a focus puller, so he's handling like the focus remotely on the camera. So the DP is just focusing on holding and pushing and pulling. The AC2 is focused on the slate and kind of just making the markers and additional help and lens swap outs and all that stuff, just to make it as fast as possible. If you've ever seen like footage of a pit stop in a race of a car where people just like do the wheels, like the tire change real quick, that's almost like what an AC and camera
Yeah.
department can do sometimes with the lens changes, which is pretty cool. But yeah,
Yeah, we can do a whole episode on building a film crew, assembling a film crew, whatever we want to
that's a
call
fun one.
that. Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's so much that goes into that, and there's so much I wish I knew. Because depending on what budget you're at, there's definitely like the key positions you need to have. If you don't have one of those, you're really gonna have a hard time. And then there's definitely times where I'm wondering why they have another one of these, or they have this person there if they're not really doing anything. Because on an indie set, you often don't have as much equipment to move and stuff like that. So there's a balance there. The smaller the budget you have, the more, I guess, stringent you want to be with your resources. Like he said, it's all about time management. The better your planning is in pre-production, the more you can make every minute count, because every minute costs money on a set. You definitely don't want to be, realizing you needed something that you didn't plan for, and now you're just losing shoot time. You know, um, you got to make sure that you're prepared for weather. You got your props, all those things you need, but things will happen. Weather will change. It'll start raining and you'll have to adapt, go shoot something else. Or maybe you're on a really short shoot and you have to wait for the rain to stop or reschedule. That's my worst nightmare, is having to reschedule. You'll run into different things like missing props. I had an actress who she had a headache, and it was like, where's the Tylenol? And we had to figure out who had Tylenol so that she could keep acting, because she had a bad migraine. It will happen. So you obviously can't think of everything, but the better you plan, the more time you have to deal with those things, is the way I like to look at it. Overall, you wanna keep a good vibe on set, keep the morale up, keep the energy going, make sure everybody has snacks. If somebody's not complaining, there's no water or something like that. If you are shooting at someone's house, bring some, for example, bring some toilet paper. You know what I mean? Don't use the person's house's toilet paper. Maybe they don't have a lot and you use it all, and now there's no toilet paper. That's a big, dilemma there. Literally a shit show. Um, uh, Look, the purpose of principal photography is to get everything you need to tell the story. So if there's anything you think you might need in the edit, make sure you get it, or else you're going to wish you did. And then you might have to do reshoots, which, guess what? It costs money. And it's even harder to spend less money on reshoots than you did on a full crew and match that up with the quality of footage you got during principal photography. So don't just be like, if we need it, we'll get it later. If you think you might need it, always best to follow your gut and get it while you're there if you have it. I mean, there's been plenty of times where I'm on a set and they're like, I think we're ready to move on. Is there anything else we need? And everybody just kind of, it's like crickets. And then they move on. And then somebody, 2 minutes later is like, man, we should have got that. Or we should have got that insert or something, So that's why a shot list is key. It's exciting. It should be a fun time, but it can also be really stressful. It can be one of the most stressful parts of filmmaking, because it always comes down to wishing you had more money or you had more time. So be wise with both of those. Preparation keeps chaos under control. I, again, think we could go. I would love to talk about each one of these more, the 3 stages more in detail. We're kind of getting into a really, I guess, we're getting into shallow detail about these things. And you can see how Ben and I are just going off on like little tangents, because it's exciting talking about this stuff. But post-production, again, the one that I think most people show up unprepared for. I think people get so focused on getting the film in the can that they forget that they also have all of the assembling to do. Ben, do you want to go through some of the things, the stages of post-production?
So yeah, for sure. I think learning editing as early on as you can, the better, because being a good editor makes you a good writer and also makes you a good director. Because you just envision your whole thing better than anybody else will, because you're the one hitting export. You're the one seeing like this shot, this shot, this shot. And I think a really good masterclass of directing is editing, because you're also having to make director-like choices of which performance is the best, which is additive to the story. How do I tell this story a different way? It is a huge storytelling effort to learn editing and do that. As much as it is sound design and mixing, which is like sort of invisible to the entire process. They say the best kind of sound design is the sound that you don't notice, if not hear. And that's what's just so fascinating. You just don't think about it, and you're just you keep describing the feeling or the memory of what you watched, and you may not be able to like, hard point out, well, that was the sound design. Of course, if you saw something in IMAX or the like, yeah, of course you're going to say, oh, the sound designer and stuff. But like that's a huge element to it. Color correcting is also huge. It's also just, subtleties, things that are hidden in plain sight. But yeah, Derek's a big fan of music and score, though. I think he should.
Gosh, man,
Yeah.
I think music and score is one of the first things I'm thinking about before I even put pen to paper. It helps me write. I mean, we're talking from like a writer director perspective right now, but I think that it's important, no matter what position you're in. Maybe you're part of the camera crew, or maybe you're like a lighting guy who's just getting more perspective or insight into this stuff, or maybe you're just, an actor or a producer and you want to know more about the process. It's important to know all these things because they will come into account later on if you're, on set, you're not thinking about what the camera sees and things like that. If you're acting, it's probably important to know like what's in frame and stuff because when they go to edit it, they might be like, "Oh, this wasn't the actor didn't know what the camera could see." So now like when they walk out a little too much or something like that, we can get down to micro details about all of these different aspects of post production. But music and score, I think is one of my favorite parts of post production because it can honestly make or break the atmosphere of your film. And I'm always about making a powerful atmosphere. Just to kind of circle back and touch on sound real quick. Keep in mind, it is half of the film. I think most people, they don't they underestimate how important it is. You can have a great looking film, but if the sound is bad, it's distracting.
Yeah.
You can have great sound and bad picture, and people might think it's just a choice because the look of a film is all a choice or the lack of choices sometimes, I guess. But sound is one of those things where if it's bad, it will keep you from getting into festivals, which is what I've learned with these last two shorts I've done. It is really important, just as important as the rest of it. VFX and titles. You need some credits. VFX. Most people think of like CGI when you say that word, but it's also cleaning stuff up. Maybe somebody's shadow got into the frame, and so now you need to mask that. Or, for example, there was a shot of binoculars in Hunters where we had to clean up the lens because we were looking at these little monitors when we're on set, and then when I go to edit, I realize, oh, you can see the camera in the binoculars, so now we need to like hide that, and that's VFX, which I have some really small experience with that, enough to like explain what I want, which is good. But just like any other aspect of this, I think as a director, it's important to have, you know, kind of dipped your toe into what it entails so that you can communicate your vision and the things you need to do to clean the film up. But don't feel like you have to learn every single thing, you know, like it's going to be your job to do on set. If you're directing, don't overwhelm yourself. Definitely, pay attention to what people are doing when you're on set so that, the next time you do it or the next time you're in post production, you have a better idea of how to explain what you need or what they're talking about. Because I found myself in sound design on Hunters learning a lot. There was a lot of terms I didn't know. I learned a lot about Foley. That's where they make the sound effects for your film, which I hadn't done for Pollo Loco. That was pretty much, I would say, like 90% the sound that we got on set, which is definitely more of the guerrilla way to do it. And I think that's why Hunters feels like such a step up in quality for me, is because we had all those little things with the sound design that we didn't have before. So, but again, cost money. So that it's because I planned for it. So, and then distribution, depending on what you're doing. If it's a short film, obviously you're probably going to be putting it online, like YouTube or Vimeo. Festivals is, probably the main source of distribution for short films to get people, outside of your friend and colleague group to see it. Get it into festivals so that it can be exposed to an audience. Which can also lead to work too. I've gotten plenty of auditions from talking to somebody at a festival because they saw my work and they're like, "Hey, there might be something you can audition for." And then I get an audition. So, um, get your work out there. And then, Ben, I don't know, you probably have a little more experience with this, but with features, you get into like streaming deliverables and DCPs. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, a DCP is something you could kind of do fairly simply. There's festivals will usually require them, but they'll have a go-to service for you to get that done. And
Correct
it
me if I'm
costs
wrong.
like,
It stands for Digital Cinema Package, right?
that's correct. I think,
Okay,
yeah.
just making
Or
sure.
digital
I think
camera package, or I don't fucking,
I think it's cinema because it's going to be playing in the cinema, right?
yeah.
I think
It'd
so.
make no sense if it was camera, actually.
Yeah,
But
digital
yeah,
camera
whatever.
package.
Yeah. There's
We're
people that'll
learning too,
charge different
guys.
prices for it. Yeah, exactly. So you can get those for different prices. I think for a short film, it depends on the length of it and the file size. Um, and then also like the quality that you want on there. It should be somewhere under 1,000 if you're doing a feature. If you're doing a short, it should be somewhere around like 150 to 250, I'd say, is I think if I'm remembering correctly what I paid for it. But yeah, there's deliverables like that. Um, and typically that stuff is handled for you unless you're like the, one-stop editor yourself and you're the guy who's, hitting export and making the hand delivering everything, which, some directors are like that. That's awesome if you are. I've done that a few times. Would I do it again? Actually, yeah, if it was my thing and I, wasn't, yeah, no reason for me not to. It's fairly simple, but if I don't have to, I probably wouldn't.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I would say early on, a lot of depending on what I guess what size the festival is. A lot of the smaller festivals will literally just ask for the like an MP4. I've had some
Mhm.
festivals say, "Hey, we're a small festival. We don't have a lot of storage, and we're playing a lot of films. Do you think you can give us the film in 1080p?" You'll have different criteria for each festival. One of the bigger festivals I got into, they needed subtitles and I didn't have them, so I had to have them made. Which again is one of those things where there's plenty of services online that will do it for you, and they'll charge it, a rate per minute. A lot of this is based on a rate per minute. Subtitles tend to be pretty cheap though in comparison to a lot of the other things we've talked about. But yeah, it really depends on where your film's going to play. DCPs are mainly meant to be played at, really nice, state of the art auditoriums. Like Pollo Loco played at a Cinemark, and so they wanted an actual DCP. And I like he said, some festivals will actually have like discounts or deals with the service that does DCPs for you. So if you haven't had one done yet, they'll do it, and usually saves you some money that way because they have a deal. But the big point about post production is that it's where you take your raw footage and your sound and you bring the film to life. You should hopefully at the end of post production end up with a finished film that you're happy with. But do not underestimate how difficult post production is. It's often, for me personally, the most I would say difficult, grueling process because it's just you want the film to be as good as possible and it can always be better, I feel like. And so you have to decide at what point for that particular project, particular budget, maybe you're like, oh, this is like a little short film that we shot for $1,000. It's, it is what it is. You don't want to invest more into a project that is only going to end up at a certain level anyways. Maybe you didn't have, if you just shot it on an iPhone and you got some cheap mics from Amazon, then there's probably only so much you can do with that. The equipment that you use, I would say, especially when it comes to sound, is going to determine, uh, you know, what quality you have to work with in post. So every little detail matters. You definitely have to pick and choose where you want to spend your money, and as you make more films, you will learn how to go through each part of this process, from development all the way to post production, with a more, I guess, streamlined approach. You'll find what works for you, what matters to you, maybe what things were pitfalls on the last film. But like we always say, the point is to learn and improve with every project. So I know that was a lot. We probably threw a lot of information at you. I again want to refer you to Studio Binder. If any of these maybe you got hung up on and you're like, huh, what were they talking about there? Or, there's more to that than I thought. I want to learn more. Studio Binder will literally give you videos on every single one of these things. Music and score, that will be a separate video. Editing, separate video. They probably have a whole series on editing actually. Um, it's been my go-to resource. They also have a YouTube channel. So yeah, Studio Binder's great. So we're gonna kind of close out here. Ben, what's besides the food poisoning or what you were going through? Is there anything interesting that happened to you since last episode?
Mm, Honestly, I can't say. I've
It's been
just been
rough,
like,
huh?
it's been rough. Like I feels like I've lost my memory over the last couple days. Oh, I had a really good meeting on a project. I'm really really hopeful for to see the light of day. And that happened a few days ago, and I'm really really excited about that. Um, and oh, I think I might have mentioned I was like in contact with someone that I'm setting up a meeting with a other project I'm really really excited about, and I just nailed down the date and time for that meeting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Happy to
I'm
be
just
alive.
trying to, yeah, just taking things day
um,
by day.
I have I went through I got a first draft of my poster for Hunters, and then I got a revision, and then this next one I think it's pretty much going to be where I want. It's definitely more complex than Pollo Loco, so I'm excited to be able to show that soon, and then officially start submitting. There's already I think it's Las Cruces International Film Festival here in New Mexico that it has a deadline coming up October 6th, so I'm planning to get that submitted before that. And, I think that festival is in April, so yeah, it's gonna be film festival mode for that film all the way till Q4 of 2026. So that's really fun. Anything you're looking
Very
forward
cool.
to here in the next couple of days?
Um, I'm gonna go to Lake Arrowhead tomorrow, assuming I'm
Nice.
not sick anymore, to for a friend's birthday. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. I don't know. I'm excited that when I when I get the time. I don't know. The thing that keeps me up is like, man, I keep seeing these Silent Hill F clips on my Facebook and like TikTok, and it's just like it knows I want to play it so bad, and I just can't play it yet because I've been either sick or I haven't had the time, and I'm moving and I don't have my new setup yet. But man, I'm really excited to play Silent Hill F when I get the chance. What about you?
So I'm seeing one battle after another tonight, and I've heard nothing but great things. A lot of
Oh
people
yeah,
are screaming Best Picture. So I will report back next episode. Speaking of next episode, I think we're gonna do 4 movies every filmmaker should watch. I think that would be a really fun one. I've definitely
oh
got a
yeah.
yeah. I got a couple that I think I'm gonna choose. We'll have to sit down and pick those movies, and maybe even like I'll if I haven't seen the ones you pick, I'll have to try and watch them real quick.
Do we
Um,
do four each or
2 each.
four together? Two each. Okay, okay, okay.
But I am looking forward to. I got a new keyboard coming that's supposed to be better for writing, so I'm excited about that. I've been using the same gaming keyboard for like 10 years now, so excited to upgrade. I think I'm gonna start a fresh playthrough. I haven't played this since like the 360 of Red Dead Redemption, the first one. I think I'm gonna play that on
Wow,
PC. I'm excited.
exciting.
Yeah. I'm also working on the second draft of Around Midnight, working on notes for that. So a lot of stuff going on, a
Wonderful.
lot of good stuff though, and I'm glad to be like 90% recovered from this back strain that I got. Man, I feel like I'm getting old. I'm turning 30 in March, and so I'm like already feeling like an old man.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, uh, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. As always, I'm Derek Bowder,
Ben Escobar.
and this is the Fellowship of the Script. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again for the next episode. Until then, keep creating, keep pushing, and keep telling stories that matter. See ya.
That's right. We'll see you guys.